Hey there, all you friends, true believers, and newcomers alike, and welcome to another Superfly Comics Guy Omnibus review. Today we're looking at the Secret Wars Omnibus. Secret Wars is a landmark milestone event in Marvel's comic history, so the name carries quite some significance to it. But this is an event from the 1980s, so today we are going to find out if it still holds up as we look through the cover, the spine, the contents collected, the build quality, and a flip through where I can share my thoughts, opinions, and recommendations on the book. So if that sounds good to you guys, you know how to show it, and feel free to leave your own thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. But with that out of the way, strap in, because where we're going, we don't need roads. Let's go back to the 80s and examine this. All right, everybody, here we have the dust jacket to the Secret Wars Omnibus. This is the latest printing. I believe this is from 2022, and this is the standard cover that I have. There is also a very swanky looking direct market cover by the legendary Alex Ross. I believe at one point in time the previous printings of this omnibus may have swapped these two covers, where this was the direct market and the other Alex Ross one was the standard. But if that's the case, it's nice to see Marvel swap it around so everybody gets a chance to grab the cover they want, ideally. Here is the spine. Quite a thin omnibus. Secret Wars there, Jim Shooter, Mike Zeck, picture of Spidey down there. You got your Marvel cover gallery on the back. This has a cover price of $75 US and $93.75 Canadian, and it collects Marvel superheroes Secret Wars 1 through 12, Thor 383, She-Hulk the 2004 series number 10, and What If from 1989 number 4 and 114. So let's flip this over and take a look under the dust jacket. Bam! Oh my god, are your eyes bleeding yet? Here is the board design, a very, very saturated collage of panels and covers and just other moments from the series. There's the spine and the back. And as you know, when we have a wraparound, you gotta take a look at the full picture. So I believe in my unboxing, I thought this was quite an interesting design when I, not unboxing, well I guess my haul video that featured this book. I thought this was quite an interesting design. In hindsight, I'm a little less of a fan of it. It just seems very busy and an assault on your eyes a little bit, but it's not bad. It's just a little out there, very bright, it definitely stands out. But anyway, that's that. So let's start flipping through. Alrighty, everybody, you know the drill here. Jump into a flip through here where I'm gonna do my best to keep this as spoiler free as possible. We have a credits page here and a table of contents, but not just that. You also have, page numbers, as we'll get to later, but you start off with an introduction by Tom DeFalco here as well, who is the editor at the time. He's talking a little bit about the creation of this series and how he's blaming it on the dreaded competition, DC, that is. He said it was their fault for this event because there was a whole dispute around toys. Just explaining how Secret Wars came to be, but I will go into that. But yeah, first of all, I love with these classic Marvel books that they have the credits page, the table of contents, and the page numbers. I do wish they would do that for their more modern books as well. But let me take you back. Imagine you're smack in the middle of the 80s. Toys and action figures are huge around this time. So what ended up happening was a toy company came to DC, wanting to license a lot of their characters for a toy line. Now, meanwhile, Marvel was also trying to get a toy line going, but they ended up losing this bid with this particular company to DC. DC won the bid. But eventually, Mattel was in talks with Marvel, and they wanted the same thing. They wanted to work with Marvel on a toy line. But they didn't think that Marvel heroes were as well known as DC heroes. Now, that might seem shocking to us today, but keep in mind, at this time, Superman had just had a pretty good streak of movies at the theaters. So he was quite popular. So anyway, Mattel suggested that Marvel should create some big comic story or event that they can base this whole toy line around and tie all the major characters together. Their requirements were that it had to be called Secret Wars. Supposedly, these two words were testing very well amongst teen boys at the time. So lo and behold, here we go. We have this 12-issue maxi series that became the biggest crossover in the history of Marvel at the time, and it became their best-selling comic book series in 25 years. So think of the significance of that, and something you could compare it to the 2012 Avengers movie, Phase 1. How big a deal it was at that time to have so many heroes on screen at the same time. This is kind of the same thing. You have all these different heroes and villains featured in the same story. But Comics Guy, what about the plot? Well, to that I say, what plot? The fact I told you this was essentially a toy commercial should tell you everything you need to know about the plot. But alright, I'll humor you. You want to know what the plot is? Here's the plot. Imagine I'm holding an action figure in this hand, and imagine I'm holding another action figure in this hand. This is the plot. There. I just summarized all of Secret Wars for you. You're welcome. End of the video. Thank you for watching. Catch you next time. No, I'm just kidding. I'll elaborate a little bit more on the plot. So the book starts out with a whole bunch of recap scenes from various comic lines like The Amazing Spider-Man, Uncanny X-Men, The Avengers, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, and The Thing, actually, pardon me. And all these heroes discover a large mysterious device planted in Central Park. But before they can do anything, it teleports them away to a distant planet known as Battleworld. But not too far away on the same planet, they discover that another device has also appeared, but this one is housing a whole host of supervillains, like Doctor Doom and Dr. Octopus and Molecule Man and the Wrecking Crew and Enchantress and the Lizard, Magneto, Galactus even. So you have a group of heroes on one side, you have a group of villains on the other side, and a mysterious voice booms from the heavens, claiming to be called the Beyonder. And this voice says, "Vanquish your foes, and I will give you whatever you desire." So from that point on, it's basically heroes versus villains, and only one side can come out triumphant. Now that's pretty cut and dry. You'd think the heroes would just start to work together, right? No, this is Marvel we're talking about. They do what Marvel heroes do best. Lots of misunderstandings, and they end up fighting each other, initially because of it, rather than fighting the villains. That's, if you're not familiar with Bronze and Silver Age Marvel comics, that's a very common Marvel trope. Especially, like, two heroes will meet up in an issue, and then they'll misunderstand each other, think they're enemies at first, and then they'll fight over it before eventually learning to work together against a common foe. And I guess speaking of the 2012 Avengers movie, they kind of reference this in that scene in the forest where Iron Man and Captain America end up fighting against Thor at first.
Doth mother know you weareth her drapes?
But anyway, that's all well and good. This trope is all well and good when it happens occasionally in a comic series. But when you have an event like this, where basically every issue is about fighting, it kind of just feels like a waste of time filler. So you just kind of roll your eyes at it. You're like, guys, come on. Like, it's pretty cut and dry. Just work together already. I will say, though, as stupid as the reasoning for some of the fighting is between the heroes, it is pretty entertaining to watch Spider-Man take on multiple X-Men simultaneously, and he just mops the floor with them without batting an eye. Spider-Man in the 1980s was pretty overpowered. But yeah, this is basically just one big fight, and to go along with that, there's some pretty cringy dialogue every now and then, such as She-Hulk saying things like, "Whoa, that was tubular to the max." It can come across a little bit stilted and funny. Reed Richards is basically just there to spew technical mumbo jumbo every so often, which, as somebody who does software engineering, it's very funny to me listening to some of the stuff that comes out of his mouth. Captain America, who, as you can imagine, very quickly becomes the leader of the heroes. There's a scene where the villains are taking off, like taking a piece of the planet and flying away into space, taking an entire civilization with them. And what was it? I think it's Spider-Woman who's saying like, "Oh my God, like I know people there. We have to go. What do we do, Captain America?" And he basically goes, we can't do anything. Let's just go to sleep." So I found that to be pretty funny. Our fearless leader, Captain America, thanks for the advice. I guess we'll go sleep. There's a pretty funny side story with Colossus, who spends a lot of the time of this story just daydreaming about this healer woman who the heroes meet pretty early on this planet. Which is very funny to me. Like, Colossus is completely infatuated with this stranger, this alien that he came across, but he's supposed to be in a relationship with Kitty Pryde at this time, so it's like, you okay, dude? So the dialogue and some of the writing can be a little corny, a little cheesy, a little cringy. At times, it just feels like it's one step from, what are we, some kind of Secret Wars?
What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
But anyway, despite all of these characters, I actually found Doctor Doom to be by far the most interesting character in this story. And frankly, a lot of the time it feels like he's the protagonist here. Similar to how Captain America is the leader of the heroes, Doctor Doom positions himself as the leader of the villains because, well, naturally his ego wouldn't settle for anything less. But the entire time he's over this whole, like, good versus evil thing. He really just wants to be, he's scheming to obtain ultimate power, so he wants to take on the Beyonder and steal his powers. So watching Doctor Doom is just really entertaining, and by God, he has some of the coolest moments in the entire story, and some of the coolest covers too. Like, they still hold up, and this is a pretty good time to talk about the art, because I found the art to be pretty strong throughout this whole book. Now, there are some occasional panels here and there where you get the impression that some things might have been a bit rushed, some characters look a little awkward, but that's normal, pretty forgivable. Otherwise, the art is pretty consistent, and again, some really, really cool covers, like the one where Spider-Man gets the alien costume for the first time. Super iconic cover. You'd think that storyline, the black suit, would kind of play a bigger part in this story, but not really. It basically just serves as a replacement costume for him in this event, and then the whole black suit saga sort of unfolds in Spider-Man's own series later on, so that's fine. But anyway, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, Secret Wars was just a 12-issue maxi series. Quick terminology alert for people who aren't familiar: maxi series usually meant like a limited series that ran for like around 12 issues or so, whereas a mini series is closer to 5 or 6 issues. But anyway, it's a 12-issue event. So the main story of this omnibus is really only around 330 pages, so that might put some people off given the price of this thing. Now the rest, everything after that, are stories that either tie into or reference the events of Secret Wars. So first we have this Thor fill-in issue, and this is pretty straightforward. It elaborates on a period of the story where Thor was separated from the rest of the group, and he spends some time with Enchantress. It's actually pretty fun. I'm not the biggest Thor fan, but I quite enjoyed that issue. The next one we have is an issue from Dan Slott's She-Hulk run from 2004. Now, this one goes into the origin of Titania, who plays a part in Secret Wars, and she's one of She-Hulk's villains. So this one was pretty entertaining as well. It mainly just focuses on her. The next two issues we get, bonus issues I suppose I'll call them, are what ifs. This first one is the better one of the two. What if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man? And those of you with a keen eye may notice that this features Mark Bagley on art. So this is pretty much what it sounds like. It's what if the black suit had taken over Peter Parker? But it gets surprisingly dark. It feels a little bit like a predecessor to Chip Zdarsky's Spider's Shadow, which I've done a review on if you want to check that out. And then the other what if issue we get is sort of a what if 25 years later type story. It takes place, I think, 25 years later or after the Secret Wars event, and it kind of focuses on like a new generation of heroes, children of the original heroes and villains who were involved in Secret Wars. You also have like Doom's son here, I guess. I really didn't care much for this what if issue. I found it to be pretty boring. And then we jump into the extras section. So we have this piece here about the toys, and this goes into the backstory of that toy line that I mentioned at the beginning of this video that drove this whole event in the first place. So it's going to repeat a lot of the stuff I said, the competing bids between toy companies and Marvel and DC and all that. But it talks a little bit more about how huge the marketing was for this. The Secret Wars branding was just everywhere at the time. Board games, sunglasses, stickers, watches, gumball machines, lunch boxes, even beach towels. It was everywhere. And I mentioned that Secret Wars became one of the best-selling Marvel comic series in a really long time, in 25 years. But all this effort went into this partnership and Secret Wars branding. But what's funny to me is that the toys sounded very, very cheap. They're talking about how they were basically reusing bodies for the toys. A lot of the characters were missing details. There was barely any articulation in the toys. They seemed pretty low quality, honestly, and before long, even though the comic series sold so well, the toys ended up having the opposite fate. Soon enough, you could find them in clearance bins in stores. Pretty crazy. And now we go into a lot of cover pencils and designs and your more typical extras fare. This one's pretty cool. It's the original cover for the series, which is a little different, actually, because Kitty Pryde, I guess, was originally supposed to be in the series, but she wasn't. And then Mr. Fantastic and Thor are up here, but they had to get cut off to make space for the title. And Nightcrawler had to be pushed over to the right a little bit to fit the page. So just some minor changes here and there. You can see the outcome here. Yeah, actually Nightcrawler, this is him to the left, but in the cover of the omnibus, you'll see that he's actually pushed over a little bit. Oh yeah, the original design for the black suit. So it wasn't going to be black and white at first. The original idea was black and red, which I thought was pretty cool. They kind of added this design as one of the alternate suits in the Spider-Man PS4 game. More pencils, and these are quite spectacular. Honestly, a lot of these, I was flipping through, and some of these pencils are actually more impressive than what the finished product ended up being. So it just really speaks to the talent of the pencilers at this time. But everything else is pretty standard. I don't want to flip through too much of these pencils because there actually is quite a lot of them, and I don't want to spoil the story for you. But you have some more panels here, some more covers, and here you have the direct market variant for this printing of the omnibus. Pretty fantastic. Okay, so for build quality, we have 496 pages in this omnibus. There is that eye, which is about as helpful as Wolverine in a daycare. Very, very small eye. The pages are very, very thin. As soon as I started this book, I could tell that the page quality was going to be rough. You may have noticed as I was flipping through the book that they're very, very thin. You can quite often see right through to the other side of the page. That eye being so small, it can occasionally lead to gutter loss. This wasn't a period of time where spread pages were super common, but there are a few here and there, so the gutter loss can affect the reading experience. There are the occasional printing defects here that you may notice. They're pretty rare though. I'm not sure if that's specific to this omnibus or if that's how it was in the original issue as well. But yeah, the biggest disappointment by far is the thickness, or rather the thinness, of these pages. But again, I do have to give them kudos for including page numbers, a table of contents, credits page, all that fun stuff. I do wish more modern books would do that, but overall, pretty poor build quality on this omnibus. Okay, so let's wrap up here with some closing thoughts. I gotta be honest, I was really excited to read this event for its historical significance. Like I said, the Secret Wars name carries a lot of significance. It was a big deal for Marvel at the time, and I totally understand why that was the case when it came out. But in hindsight, reading it now, especially given the amount of big events we've had from Marvel and DC, in hindsight, it just doesn't feel like this event has much to offer outside of spectacle. Now, I'm not calling it bad, it's more so just fine. Quite frankly, the context and the mythology surrounding the creation of this series, I think that part is more interesting than the event itself. So overall, I don't think I can recommend this to the average reader, unless you're a big fan of Doctor Doom, or maybe you just want to just turn your brain off and watch characters throw hands for 12 issues, and that's okay. But at $75 for a main story that's just a little bit over 300 pages, if you're more budget conscious about your omnibus purchases, you might consider looking into other books. But if you're a child of the 80s and this is pure nostalgia for you, that's another reason I could see someone picking this up. And because I can see the question coming up, if I had to compare this between DC's similar event, Crisis on Infinite Earths, even though I wasn't too fond of Crisis, I would say that story is objectively the better one. There's no doubt about that. But overall, I felt like I had a better time reading Secret Wars. It was more enjoyable to read, so take that for what it's worth. But that's been my review of the Secret Wars Omnibus, so you let me know what you thought about this omnibus, my opinions. Did you read the original event when it came out? And if you did, feel free to talk a little bit about what that was like to experience this story as it was unfolding. Anything you want to talk about, leave it down below. But thank you so much for joining me today, guys. I hope to catch you in another video real soon, so you have yourself a great day. I've been Superfly Comics Guy, and until next time, you keep reading. Bye-bye, guys.